Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I am your host, Catherine Hadro, in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thank you for joining us. In this week's show, a former NFL player tackles the pro-life issue. Hear how he's helping the cause. A comedian bashes the pro-life film Unplanned. We speak out. And this.
This issue of preborn babies is number one. There's no close issue.
A retired Catholic member of Congress gives us his take on the pro-life movement today. But first, our top story, a Senate committee takes up the cause for the pro-life pain-capable Unborn Child Protection Act.
We hear all this talk about women's rights, but I beg the question, where were my rights in the womb? Where are the rights of the little girls who are going to lose their lives to abortion every single day? Where are my rights now as a woman who survived an abortion? Where are the rights of my daughters who never would have lived if that abortion would have succeeded in ending my life?
That was an emotional testimony from abortion attempt survivor Melissa Oden at this week's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on the pain-capable bill. She was joined by two other pro-life witnesses and two pro-abortion witnesses. The hearing was chaired by South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham on the need to pass the pain-capable bill. The legislation would ban abortions after 5 months of pregnancy, which is when science shows unborn children can feel pain. Joining us now is Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which held the pain-capable hearing. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Catherine. Good to be with you.
First off, what should our viewers know about the pain-capable bill and the hearing?
So there are two big important pieces of legislation that we've been talking about in the Senate this year, and it was great that this week we got to spend some time on the pain-capable bill. I'm an original co-sponsor of that. I'm also the lead sponsor of the Abortion Survivors Protection Act. This week we got to talk about pain-capable. Well, what does that mean? Well, it turns out when we do fetal surgery on little babies that are still in mom's uteruses, we know that they are susceptible to feeling and suffering pain, and so we use anesthesia when babies are having surgery. And so obviously that tells us some pretty basic scientific truths that we also know to be image-based truths and moral truths about the fact that those babies in mom's tummies, they're babies and they have human dignity and they can suffer pain, and obviously our laws ought to protect those babies. And so our legislation, Lindsey Graham is the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and so he held this hearing this week to focus attention on the 20-week point in particular in gestation, because it's such a clear marker now where we know a lot about the pain that is suffered by those babies in utero, and those babies ought to be protected.
5 months of pregnancy or 20 weeks is when science indicates unborn babies can feel pain, yet your Democratic colleagues at the hearing painted that as junk science. Senator, how is there a disagreement about the science?
Yeah, I've got to agree with you, Catherine, that the hearing this week was just filled with tragic attacks on reason and on moral truth, but also just on basic scientific data. There's a reason why almost no countries on earth do what the U.S. does, which is allow abortion on demand up until the day and the moment in the week before a baby is born. And when you look at the company that we keep in that space, there are only 3 other countries. North Korea, China, and Vietnam are the only other countries that allow abortion on demand until the end of the 3rd trimester. And when you actually look at the map of 200 countries across the world, the motion you're seeing is toward more and more nations saying, obviously, once a baby is viable outside the womb, or once a baby is able to feel pain, that baby needs protections. And so there were Democrats saying things in this week's hearing that are just really hard to understand. The abortion industry has driven the Democratic Party to a place far, far to the left of the American people. It's tragic, but there's still good news. And the good news is this, and that is that science is on our side, and there's a whole bunch more in utero technology. There's a whole bunch more sonogram technology revealing to American voters and moms and dads and neighbors what's happening in utero, and that is that little baby sucking her thumb, she's a baby and she deserves protection.
Absolutely. 3 of your colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee are running for president. Senators Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, and Kamala Harris. What should our voters know about their stance on the pro-life issue and the pain-capable bill?
Well, it looks like there is a race to the left in the Democratic Party, and some of it is clearly driven by posturing for a Democratic presidential primary, where folks are running not just to the left of the American people, but well to the left of the Democratic electorate. And so you see these presidential candidates, the three that you mentioned, saying things that would be really hard to hear in the ear as fitting with Democratic rhetoric 20 years ago. Bill Clinton used to talk about the goal of making abortion safe and legal, but rare. I want us to protect all of those babies, but at least the Democratic Party of 20 years ago could acknowledge that abortion was a moral tragedy. And so Bill Clinton would talk about safe and legal, but rare. These folks are not saying in any way that they want to make it rare. There's a movement among certain extremists in the abortion industry and in the Democratic presidential primary world to shout your abortion, to celebrate your abortion. And this is a painful moment in the moral life of America.
Finally, Senator, on a different pro-life topic, you did introduce the Senate's version of the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which would provide medical coverage to abortion survivors. This failed in the Senate earlier this year, but last week we saw House Republican leadership file a discharge petition to force a floor vote. What did you make of that move?
Well, I'm grateful for the House pro-life leaders that are continuing to fight for this discharge petition because we need the voters of America to be able to see their elected officials on record. Where do you stand on the question of infanticide? This is not a hard problem. There are debates in American politics that are hard. There are debates that require courage. It doesn't require any courage to say that a baby that's been born and is outside of her mother and is fighting for life and gasping for breath on that delivery table, on that sadly intended abortion table, when that baby's alive, she needs basic medical care.
Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, who serves on the Senate Judiciary Committee, thank you for your time.
Thank you for covering this important story.
Joining us now in studio is Marilyn Musgrave, a former U.S. representative for the state of Colorado. She's now the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Susan B. Anthony list. Marilyn, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be here.
First off, can you tell us what are American attitudes towards this bill, the pain-capable bill?
Well, the American attitude is over 60% of people say there should not be abortion after the point in the pregnancy where the unborn child can feel pain. And my goodness, the things we've seen in Virginia and New York lately, you know, many times we can't get that pro-life message out there so people notice. People are noticing and they have very strong opinions that it isn't right.
They're paying attention to this.
Yes.
At this pain-capable bill hearing, and I know you were there, the Democratic members were trying to paint the science behind this as junk science. Here is what Ranking Member Senator Dianne Feinstein had to say.
Here are the scientific facts concerning fetal pain. A human fetus does not have the capacity to experience pain until after viability.
Congresswoman, what is your response to that?
Well, first of all, I guess if you say it like that with authority, you think it's true. But I'll tell you, we have doctors now, and our research arm, Charlotte Lozier Institute, brings these doctors into committee to testify. And we had Dr. Donna Harrison there testifying on the ability of that child to feel pain. And she talked about how this group of doctors, the OBGYNs, APLOG is the acronym, you know, she says they've never polled their members on this. And 85% of OBGYNs in this country do not perform abortion. So when they hold up this scientific evidence, we now have evidence. We have these doctors speaking out on the ability of that child at that point in gestation to feel pain, not only to feel pain even more than we do as fully developed human beings.
And another major pro-life story, last week, House Republican leadership filed a discharge petition to force a vote on the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. Can you update us? Where do things stand with that discharge petition?
Well, let me just say to people out there that don't understand the jargon sometimes, a discharge petition is a demand for a vote. And the Speaker of the House, who's Nancy Pelosi now, they determine whether or not a bill will come up for a vote. She determines it. And so these members went to the well. That's the area where you see the podium and everything where the speaker is. They went there, they signed the petition to demand a vote. I was amazed. I was up in the gallery with some of my colleagues from Susan B. Anthony List, and Congressman Lloyd Schmucker was there, and he took my hand and he took me to go down and look down and see the line of members. And he said, Marilyn, it goes clear out to the plaza. So they were standing in line to sign that. God bless Steve Scalise for doing that and organizing. Every Republican signed it. 199 people have signed it. We have 3 courageous Democrats that have signed it. McAdams from Utah, Colin Peterson from Minnesota, we can always count on him, and Dan Lipinski, a stand-up pro-life Democrat that's our hero. So we need 18 more. We need these Democrats that are in these districts, that they need to be worrying about what their constituents are going to think if they won't even support helping an unborn child, giving it medical aid after it survives a failed abortion.
And as a former U.S. representative yourself, can you speak to how unique that tactic is of filing a discharge petition? Did you ever utilize that?
I signed probably 2 discharge petitions while I was in Congress for 3 terms. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a long line down there in the well to sign a discharge petition. I've never seen such unity. Actually, nothing like that had happened. 22 years ago, people signed in great numbers on a discharge petition, but this was history in the making.
Congresswoman Marilyn Musgrave, thank you for being with us.
It's great to be with you always.
Thank you. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise recently filed a discharge petition for the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. This tactic is a way to bypass House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and force a floor vote on the bill, because House Democrats have blocked it more than 25 times. But in order for the discharge petition to be successful, a simple majority, or 218, members of Congress need to sign it. That brings us to this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com. Again, that is ProLifeWeekly.com. Here you can send a message directly to your U.S. representative, urging your representative to sign this discharge petition for the Born Alive bill so we can see a vote on the House floor. The Born Alive bill simply requires abortion survivors, infants who are born alive, receive the appropriate medical care. When you go to the website, ProLifeWeekly.com, you'll simply fill out some of your basic information so we can craft this message to be for your specific U.S. representative. Let's show our representatives that the American people support this bill, and they should sign the discharge petition so we can get a vote on the Born Alive bill. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com. Turning now to our next story, a former NFL player puts his money where his mouth is when it comes to support for the pro-life movement.
Julie and her team are right on the front lines of helping women and young men just make decisions to bring forth life. And so we've partnered with her and her team for several years. And today, we, the people at Transformation Church, want to give you $50,000 to continue to do the great work that you're doing.
That is former NFL player Derwin Gray, who today is a Christian pastor. Derwin recently made a $50,000 donation to a local pro-life pregnancy center, the Women's Enrichment Center. The purpose behind the donation is a powerful one. We spoke with Gray recently to hear why. Here's our interview. Joining us now is former NFL player Derwin Gray, who is the founding and lead pastor of Transformation Church, a Christian church just south of Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor for me to be here.
It's an honor for us to speak with you. And you made some headlines recently because your church made a generous $50,000 donation to a local pro-life pregnancy center. And from my understanding, there is a personal reason behind that donation. Can you share that story with our viewers?
Yeah, it would be my honor to. So when my mom was pregnant with me, she was 16 years old. It was in the early 70s, and that was at the time of desegregation of schools. And so she found herself as an African-American teenage female at a predominantly all-white school. And she went to the school nurse, and she said that she was pregnant, and the school nurse said to her, well, you should go to California where they perform abortions because this could ruin your life. And so I'm thankful that my mom, in essence, said a cuss word to the school nurse and said no. And I actually didn't know that story up until about 5 or 6 years ago when my mom and I were in conversation and she shared that story. And so being a follower of Christ, but also understanding my mom at 16 years old, making a courageous decision to bring me into the world has definitely influenced my perspective as a pastor, but also understanding the dynamics that every human being is made in the image of God, and every human being deserves an opportunity for life. And so at Transformation Church, we've partnered with the Women's Enrichment Center for over 8 years. And so we were somewhat surprised that our story kind of went viral, since we have been partnering with the Women's Enrichment Center for a while, both financially, but also in service as well. So we're very passionate. What we like to say at Transformation Church is we're pro-life from the womb to the tomb. So issues of justice matter to us, but also understanding that the decision to bring a child into the world is a difficult one. Mm-hmm. And if people don't have an understanding of God's grace and God's love and God's provision, they're going to look for a way out. And so by partnering with the Women's Enrichment Center, what we're able to do is not only help with bringing the child to life, but after the child is born, to walk alongside the mom, to walk alongside the dad, not only educationally, but job training, and also mental, emotional, and spiritual support. And so we want to have a holistic understanding of what it means to be pro-life. And so for me as a pastor, I think of who are the kids that could have been born who are like me, that grew up in a at-risk environment, a troubled environment, yet God in His grace has used that now to utterly transform my life. And so we just want to be a part of seeing Christ bring life into the world.
That's beautiful, and I am so grateful for your mother's yes to your life. And this brings me straight to my next question. You mentioned how you partner with pro-life centers like the Women's Enrichment Center where you donated. Why are these centers so important for our nation?
Oh gosh, they are so important because it's important for women and men to know that there is another alternative. There is another option. Life is sacred. Life is precious. Life is a gift. Mm-hmm. And we believe there's dark demonic forces that wants to devalue life. And so the Women's Enrichment Center, along with churches, can come alongside these women and men to say, listen, yes, bringing a child into the world is hard. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, but it is so worth it. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people just don't know, and there's so much fear. And we know that fear, anything done in fear, is not going to work out well. But perfect love, as 1 John 4:18 says, casts out all fear. And so we want to come alongside of organizations that are promoting the understandingness of sacredness of life, but then partnering with a holistic understanding of life.
You, as I mentioned, are a former NFL player. I've interviewed former NFL player Matt Burke about his pro-life views. I know there are other players who are boldly pro-life as well. Do you think having played in the NFL gave you a bigger platform to share your life-affirming messages?
Oh, there's no question about it. When I look at the kaleidoscope of my life, I was never the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, nor the best athlete. But God somehow found in His mysterious grace to give me opportunities to excel. And so my NFL platform was definitely for me to not only enjoy it, but it has opened up doors that people will listen to me simply because I played in the NFL. And so at this stage of my life, I want to steward that platform well. And what better platform than the NFL to say, you know what, the NFL may stand for National Football League, but God's NFL stands for newfound life. Mm. And He wants people to live because we are His image bearers.
Derwin Gray, former NFL player, now pastor of Transformation Church. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
when we come back.
At the Golden Gate, St. Peter's not going to say, Dornan, how many bombers did you get built? He's going to say, thanks for your efforts, I hope, for the little ones, the little preborn.
A former Catholic congressman reflects on the pro-life movement. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I am your host, Catherine Hadro. On a national television show, a comedian dismissed Unplanned as, quote, an anti-choice propaganda movie. That's this week's Speak Out segment.
This weekend, anti-choice propaganda movie Unplanned surprised audiences with a not awful showing at the box office. It's obviously ridiculous and no one should see it.
On her TBS program Full Frontal last week, comedian and TV host Samantha Bee delivered a crass monologue about the film Unplanned's opening weekend at the box office. Unplanned tells the story of Abby Johnson's conversion from Planned Parenthood clinic director to pro-life leader. Bee called the film, quote, mostly made up, and said it comes at a time when there are, quote, terrifying laws being passed to limit abortion. Bee devoted a great deal of time in her segment advocating for abortion and attacking pro-lifers, but she spent zero time explaining why she thinks the movie Unplanned is, quote, made up. She pointed to no evidence that Abby Johnson is not telling the truth. Ashley Bratcher, the actress who portrays Abby in Unplanned, probably said it best when she responded to Bee on Twitter with this message. For someone who has so much to say, she sure doesn't want anyone else to have a voice. Bratcher also encouraged Bee to go see what Abby saw. I second that. In fact, Samantha Bee, here is an invitation. I would love to go and see the Unplanned movie with you. Instead of blasting Abby Johnson's witness, how about going to see her story firsthand? Just send me an email at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com to connect, and the ticket is on me. Remember, there is always something you can do to build up a culture of life and to counter today's culture of death by following this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com, send a message directly to your U.S. representative, urging your member of Congress to sign the discharge petition for the Born Alive bill so we can see a vote on the House floor. Pro-life battles are frequently fought and won on Capitol Hill, as Congress is an important front in the pro-life movement. It's a battle that our next guest knows well. This week, we sit down with a Catholic and pro-life former U.S. representative. He reflects on the pro-life laws he put into place and gives advice to lawmakers today.
Faith, family, and freedom.
Robert Dornan has a storied life. He's nephew to the Tin Man in the classic film The Wizard of Oz. He was involved in the entertainment industry himself, among one of his many roles playing Captain Fowler in the 1960s TV series 12 O'Clock High.
Right on the money.
The TV role came after his real-life experience of serving in the U.S. Air Force as a post-Korean War fighter pilot. But when we joined the now 86-year-old Dornan in his Virginia home, we come to discuss his time as a pro-life lawmaker.
All of the adventures of my life, nothing comes close to passing laws, not just amendments, laws to protect the preborn babies of this nation.
Robert, or Bob Dornan, served as a U.S. representative for California between 1977 and 1997 and quickly gained a nickname on Capitol Hill.
I picked up a nickname, and it really stuck, B1 Bob.
The name came in part because the military veteran popularized the POW MIA bracelets that commemorated the name and date a soldier was missing in action or became a prisoner of war. Dornan was seen as a top national security and intelligence expert in Congress, but always wished to be seen for his other passion.
I say, call me pro-life Bob. They go, that doesn't sound good. B1 Bob it is.
The California congressman was behind a number of pro-life laws, such as barring federal funds from going to abortions on overseas military hospitals.
All of those bases everywhere in the world, no abortions.
He also barred American dollars from paying for abortions on Native American reservations.
I did that with a one-word speech, or one sentence. So the genocide goes on. Unanimous voice vote.
And put an end to the funding of abortions in women's prisons.
And then women's prisons, we don't have co-ed prisons. How do women in prison get pregnant? The guards, authority figure. Then they put them in the tinted glass limousine and take them off to the abortion. I cut off that.
Dornan also knew the founder of the March for Life, Nellie Gray, as he was a frequent voice on the national rally stage.
And he introduced the first legislation that cut off funding for abortion in the defense bill. And he introduced the bills that cut off funding for killing the children here in the District of Columbia. And this was not a popular thing for him to do, but he was strong enough to do it. Of course, this is the Honorable Robert K. Dornan.
Today, the 86-year-old Catholic takes pride in being a father, grandfather, and husband to his wife, Sally. As we look back on his time as a pro-life lawmaker, Dornan looks forward. Alarmed by the recent comments made by his Virginia Governor Ralph Northam that seemed to defend infanticide, this retired congressman is staying on top of pro-life news. And he shares with us his advice to the President of the United States.
The President has got to introduce in the gallery on the very next State of the Union, which kicks off 2020, the election year, he has got to say, I have special guests in the gallery.
Dornan's idea for the special guests, a network of abortion survivors.
What will that House be like? With the whole Senate there, the Supreme Court, all those four-star generals and admirals in the front row?
More than 2 decades since leaving Capitol Hill, Dornan's continued passion to protect the unborn isn't because of partisan politics, but for a higher purpose.
At the Golden Gate, St. Peter's not going to say, Dornan, how many bombers did you get, Bill? He's going to say, thanks for your efforts, I hope, for the little ones, the little preborn.
That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next week, I'd love to hear from you. You can email us at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com or look for us all over social media. Just search for EWTN Pro-Life. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.